Hello everyone and welcome back to the Podcasters Podcast. My name's Louie and today we're talking about your guest. Whether you're doing an interview in person or online, your guest is the most critical part of an interview type podcast. So today we're going to explore how to get the most out of your guest, how to prepare them for your show, and how to guide them through the whole process as the host. Okay, so you've got a really good guest that you want to be able to interview. How do we get the most out of them? Well, the process begins way before the podcast even starts. As soon as you make contact with your guest, you need to prepare them to make sure that when they arrive, they are comfortable and ready for all the different things that you're going to ask them. Remember, you are the professional here, you're the host, you are used to this environment, but a guest, maybe this is the first podcast they've ever been on. You need to be able to prepare them and prep them for this strange environment with lights, cameras, microphones, and the pressure and the heat of the moment. So before the podcast begins, you need to be emailing them, messaging them with all sorts of information to mentally prepare them for what is going to be asked of them. That could be in the form of some questions. Don't give it all away, but maybe send them some pointers as to what you might be asking them so that they can prepare. Maybe write a couple of responses or at least get thinking about where the interview is going to go. Also, they need to know when and where they're going, whether it's a studio, whether it's an online link. Make sure that they have everything they need and they know how long they're going to be spending with you. So if they need to block out time in their diary or make sure you've got contingency time either way, they are ready and they know how long that they're expected to be there for. There is nothing worse than having to end a podcast early because your guest wasn't prepared for how long they were going to be there. If your guest has no concept of podcasting whatsoever, it might be useful to send them a couple of episodes of your show, just so that they can get a feel of what to expect. If you're starting out and you haven't launched anything yet, send them some examples of some podcasts that they can watch that maybe match the style of what it is that you are creating. So that is everything that you need to do before your guest is even in the podcasting environment. This is when you make first contact. Now we're going to move on to what happens before you start recording. So your guest has entered the environment, they're ready to record, they're either on a Zoom link or they're in the studio. I'm going to focus right now on if they were online because a lot or maybe the vast majority of interviews happen over something like Riverside. So my first couple of points are something that you should outline to them before they're even in the environment, but this is something that you can double check before you press record. Now, you are obviously the most experienced podcaster in the room. You've got the cameras, you've got the microphone, you've figured out your space and all of that stuff, but your guest has no idea about any of that stuff. So we need to prepare them with the equipment and the knowledge so that they can get the highest quality recording with whatever they've got available to them. So some questions that you should be asking both in the preliminary email and in the moment before you press record is, do you have any sort of microphone that you can get, whether it's, some earphones with the inline microphone or anything like that they can plug in, or whether they've got a microphone that's been gathering dust in a cupboard somewhere. Can they get it out and plug it in and see if it works? Because anything, I promise you anything, will be better than the inbuilt microphone in their laptop or webcam or whatever it is that they might be using to join you online. Another really important element to consider is headphones. Obviously, you should be wearing headphones, but so should your guest. Now, especially online, when you're using Riverside or Zoom or something like that, headphones are especially important. Now, I know in previous episodes I've told you that headphones are for listening to the recording. So in an environment like I am right now, I'll be listening to the recording to make sure that nothing breaks or, there's no feedback or nothing goes wrong during the recording. But on Zoom or Riverside, we use it for a slightly different reason. So let me explain it like this. When you are in the same room as someone on a video call, maybe on your phone or something, and you get that horrible feedback noise? Now, imagine that, but on Zoom and Riverside, if you haven't got headphones plugged in, the noise from your guest is coming out of your speakers, whether that's, your computer speakers or your laptop speakers or wherever, and that noise can go up through the speakers and into your microphone, and that can create some sort of feedback or echo in the recording. Now, if your guest has, a out-of-date laptop or something that's not quite as good, Riverside and Zoom do a relatively good job of eliminating this echo, but depending on the setup, it can become a nightmare. So do make sure that both you and your guests are wearing headphones. They don't need to be good headphones. Again, it can be anything that they find in a drawer or in the cupboard or wherever. So, you want to start a podcast, but you don't know how. First of all, like and subscribe and have a look around the channel. There's lots of useful videos to help you on your way to starting, scaling, and thriving in your podcast career. Also, did you know that we run a 3-day event over here in Peterborough called the Podcast Profit System? Come join us in a room of like-minded individuals, meet the progressive team, learn how we do things, and there's a free lunch thrown in as well. All right, let's get back to the video. Now, these are some elements that you need to check with them when they are online with you, or else, there might be issues with the recording. So the first thing is that you check their framing. So obviously, if you've got a webcam and it's attached to a computer screen and it can flip and fold, or if there's a webcam like mounted somewhere that they're talking into, or whatever they've got going on, you need to make sure that their framing looks good. Now, what I mean by framing is how your face sits in the image that they are on screen. So what you need to make sure happens is that they've got lots of space around their head, specifically headroom. Now, headroom is really important when making video content because editors or anyone need to be able to punch into the content, zoom in on you so that we can create things like short clips or maybe even just crop the image to make it look nicer. So you need to make sure that the guest has lots of headroom above their head and also lots of chin room as well. Just make sure that they're nicely positioned in the frame. Also make sure that they're in the middle of the frame, not off to one side, not at a funny angle, anything like that. In the heat of the moment, you might forget these things. This is why I'm telling you this right now. So you do need to make sure that you have some sort of ritual to go through with your guests when they come online. Remember, you are the host and you know the most, so you need to coach them through this process. Make sure that they're stood up straight, that they're looking in the camera, that there's no weird angles or anything like that, and you should be good to go. Remember, your guest will respect you more for being an assertive host and telling them to do these things. Another aspect that might ruin your interviewee's recording is that they're not in a quiet space. I've talked on and on about your environment and how you make sure that you turn off, any noises or anything like that. But guests, they don't know this. So that I've had clients that have recorded with interviewees that are in like cafes or just generally loud or echoey environments like a kitchen or something. So think about where your guest is sat online. Can they move? Can they go to a quieter room? Can they turn anything off that might be making noises? Just try and control their environment as you would do yours. Obviously, if they're using a nice microphone or something like that, and through Riverside, which obviously records it natively, we want to make sure that they get the best quality recording out of whatever equipment they have. And if they've got bad equipment, then we need to make sure that we make the most of a bad situation and make sure that they control every other factor that they can so that we get the best recording possible. Okay, now that's all out of the way. The one last thing that we need to check before we start recording is to ask how your guest would like to be introduced. Obviously, it would be good to get a bit of preamble going with your guest, talk about their day, talk about some interesting points, even just talk to them about the format of the show, the podcast, what's going to happen, that kind of thing, to really prepare them for when you press record. Some of the worst podcasts I've ever edited are when the podcast starts as soon as the person joins the Zoom call. They're not warmed up, they're not ready. It takes them by surprise, and you really then have to spend the first half of the podcast getting them to a point where they feel comfortable. So really spend time with them, warming them up, and then use that opportunity to ask them how they'd like to be introduced. Get their name right. Pronounce it correctly, think about their job title, all of that kind of stuff. And you can really work with them. Remember, you're trying to sell your guest as well. So ask them, how do you want to be introduced? What are we selling? What are we promoting? What can I do for you here? They are coming in and they're exchanging their time for you. So you really need to make it worth their while. So spend time with them, getting a script down, and this will come in really important later down the line when we record a proper introduction. Okay, so you've pressed record. Now this is where your prior planning comes into use quite a lot. Obviously, you should have, if you're a good host, done some research on your guest before they arrive, so you know a little bit about them. Now, Don't start an interview by asking them where they grew up, what's their life story, any kind of open-ended question like that, because it kind of starts this really slow, drawn-out beginning to a podcast. Now remember, you need to create hooks. You need to drag your audience in and keep them there from the very beginning of the podcast. So do your research and find out a really interesting element of your guest. Maybe they've done something really cool, or maybe they're trying to promote something really interesting, or just think of the most interesting, not necessarily controversial or off-putting statement, because you can save that to later on once they're warmed up. But try and start with something engaging and ask that first. You can get into their backstory and stuff later on, but try and start with something good. Obviously, this is something that you can change around in the edit if you need to, but it's good to start with energy and get your guest really rolling. Don't set kind of this dull tone, really launch into it. Now, there's other aspects about making your guests feel comfortable in the environment whilst you're recording. Of course, get them some water if they're in the room with you, or make sure they have water with them or some sort of drink, just so that they can remain refreshed and not get that kind of claggy mouth sounds. And obviously, if you're talking to them for a long time, they're going to get quite tired and fatigued. So just make sure they have everything around them that they need to keep themselves going. And then remind them that they can stop at any time. If they need to pause the podcast for whatever reason, if they need to think about an answer, if they need to start, whatever it might be, make sure that they know that they can do that at any time. Obviously, it's good to keep the momentum, and you'll need to work as the host to really pick things back up if things stop, but keep your guest in mind and make sure that they know that you can stop whenever you want to. Okay, so one of the final things you should be doing with your guest when they're in the room is plugging their stuff. Like I said earlier, they are here to obviously help you create an episode of the podcast, but you also need to promote their stuff so they feel like it was worth it. They might have, a book to promote, or a film, or they might have done something really interesting, or a charity, whatever it might be. Make sure you get their links, make sure they talk about it, make sure you plug it, and don't just leave it till the end either. A lot of podcasters wait until the end to ask their guest, where can we find you? Obviously, that's great, and it's good that you've done it, but don't wait until the end of an hour where a lot of your audience might have dropped off. Do it at the beginning, do it at the middle, do it at the end. Record a call to action that signposts it, put it on the screen, put it in the show notes, put it wherever. Just make sure that you're reinforcing why you're here. It won't come across as cheesy, it will come across like you respect your guest and their time. Okay, so what happens after the podcast is done and they've left? Obviously, you should prepare them for this before they leave the Zoom call or before they leave the room. You need to tell them that this is going to go live at some point. Obviously, it hasn't gone live yet and it might need to be edited. So give them a bit of a warning. Say, in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to reach out to you again with some social clips, some links, whatever it might be to share the show. Now, your guest is a fundamental reason or a way of, expanding your growth as a podcaster. They have an audience, they've got friends, they've got family, they've got a following that we need to tap into. So in order to get our podcast out there, they need to share it. So there's multiple ways that we can do that. Obviously, sending them a link to the show would be the first thing to do. So make sure that whenever it goes live, get a link, or even before it goes live, you can grab it from Omni Studio or something like that. Send them the link for them to distribute. Also, send them social clips. Tell them, these are some social clips just for you. Put them out on your socials and use them. An even better way to utilize social clips is to collaborate with them. Now, Instagram has a built-in tool where you can add collaborators to any post that you put out there. So make sure that when you're uploading any of your short-form content, that you either at them on TikTok, mention them, tag them, collaborate with them, so that you can get the most reach out of those clips and utilize their audience too. A lot of my clients really want to double check with their guest whether an edit is good enough or not, or they want to check with a guest that, they didn't say anything that they want to remove or anything like that. If you do want to check with your guest, try sending them the raw material first so that they can give edit notes before the thing gets edited. Following these tips and making sure that you look after your guest will mean that they really enjoy their experience and they might want to come on again to share more stories. Also, make sure to ask your guest if they know anyone that would really enjoy this experience, and if you make the experience enjoyable enough for them, they will recommend some people for you to interview next, which will ultimately make sure that you don't run out of guests and you keep that audience growing. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, rate, etc. I've been Louie, and I'll see you next time.